Now we'll be starting with the capital gains in special cases. So what section 45(1)(a) provides is, in case if there is any damage or destruction of capital asset, and the damage or destruction of capital asset takes place on account of natural calamities such as accidental fires, explosions, action taken in combating an enemy, riots or civil disturbances. So if there is a damage or destruction of a capital asset on account of natural calamities, accidental fire or explosion, action taken in combating an enemy, whether with or without declaration of war, then in that particular circumstance, if you receive any insurance compensation, then in that particular case, the full value of consideration will be what? The value of money plus the money plus fair market value of the asset on the date of receipt, fair market value of the asset on the date of receipt of compensation. That will be regarded as full value of consideration, and the taxability will arise in the year in which the compensation is received. And in case if it is a depreciable asset, that will be reduced, adjustments will be made from the WDV of the block of asset. And in case if the proceeds exceeds the WDV, the resultant sum will be what? The capital gains. So that is section 45(1)(a). It is dealing with the specific provisions that if there is a damage or destruction of capital asset on that account, the insurance compensation so received will be regarded as full value of consideration. Basically, that is the computational aspect. Then we are having section 45 subsection 2. 45(2) is dealing with what? Conversion of capital asset into stock in trade. 45(2) is conversion of capital asset into stock in trade. So here, if any capital asset is converted into stock in trade, then what happens? That conversion is regarded as transfer. The fair market value on the date of conversion, is a full value of consideration. Fair market value on the date of conversion, that is a full value of consideration, and capital gains is chargeable to tax in the year in which such stock is sold. Capital gains is chargeable to tax. Year of transfer is here what? Year of transfer, CII of year of transfer, cost inflation index of year of transfer will be what? We will take cost inflation index of the year of conversion. We will take cost inflation index of year of conversion. So if we have a capital asset has been acquired for 2 lakhs in 1999 and the same has been converted into 2020. Okay, so say 2019. It is 15/5/2019. So here we will take the cost inflation index of 1920, and taxability arises when such stock is sold. Now what will be the business income? Business income will be the sale price of stock minus fair market value on the date of conversion. Business income will be what? The sale price of stock minus what? Fair market value on the date of conversion, which has been taken into account for computing the capital gains. So that is 45(2). 45(2)(a) is in case if your shares are held in demat form. If shares are held in demat form. So here capital gains arises. If you transfer those shares which are held in demat form, FIFO principle is applicable. And for determining the cost of acquisition, and period of holding. This is cost action and period of holding. The same will be determined on FIFO basis, and capital gains will be chargeable to tax in the hands of the beneficial owner. Now 45(3) states that in case if any capital asset is brought by a partner of a firm, or member of AOP or BOI as capital contribution, or otherwise, what is the full value of consideration? Full value of consideration is the amount recorded in the books of the firm will be full value of consideration. Whatever the amount recorded in the books of firm, that is full value of consideration. Year of taxability will be the previous year in which the transfer takes place, and the taxability will arise in the hands of the partner. So here you have to remember the full value of consideration is what? Amount which is recorded in the books of the firm. Amount which is recorded in the books of the firm, that is regarded as what? The full value of consideration. Then we are having capital gains. Capital gains in case of distribution of capital asset on partition of, say, dissolution of firm or AOP or BOI or otherwise also. So here capital gains on distribution of capital asset by a firm or AOP or BOI to partners or members. Capital gains in case of distribution of capital asset by firm or AOP or BOI to partners or members. What is the full value of consideration? The fair market value of the asset on the date of transfer. Fair market value of the asset on the date of transfer is regarded as full value of consideration. Fair market value of the asset on the date of transfer, the same is regarded as what? Full value of consideration. Year of taxability is previous year in which such transfer takes place. Year of taxability is previous year in which the transfer takes place, and the taxability arises in the hands of firm, AOP or BOI. Taxability arises in the hands of firm, AOP or BOI. Then 45(5), this is very important. 45(5) is dealing with compulsory acquisition under any law. 45(5) is dealing with compulsory acquisition under any law. Then what is the full value of consideration? Here the amount of compensation or the consideration so determined to be payable to the SSE, that is what the full value of consideration. Now year of transfer is when? When is the year of transfer? Year of transfer is basically year of compulsory acquisition. Year of compulsory acquisition, that is the year of transfer. Year of transfer is year of compulsory acquisition. Say the compulsory acquisition has taken place on 2018. So we will be using, say 2018, say 15th of July 2018. So we will be using CII of what? Financial year 2018-19. Compensation is first received in 2020-21. If compensation is received, so year of taxability will be what? The same will be taxable in the year in which the compensation or part thereof is first received. It will be taxable in the year in which compensation or part thereof is first received. And in case a compensation is enhanced, in case the compensation is enhanced or further enhanced by court, tribunal or the authority, then the enhanced compensation will be taxable in the year of receipt, and it will be taxable in the year of receipt, and cost of action and cost of improvement will be taken as nil. And in case if the same has been received by legal heir or any other person, taxability will arise in his hands. If the compensation is reduced, then the capital gains will be recomputed, taking into account the reduced compensation. So the department has gone, the land and building department has gone to a higher authority and they have reduced the compensation, then the capital gains will be recomputed taking into account the reduced compensation. In case if compensation is received by interim order, then the taxability will arise in the year in which the final order is received. Now section 1037 contains the provisions relating to compulsory acquisition of urban agricultural land which was used by individual. It was the same has been used by individual HUF for a period of 2 years immediately preceding the compulsory acquisition for agricultural purposes. In that particular circumstance, the compensation so received will be exempt. The compensation so received, the same will be exempt. And besides this, if any interest is received on compensation or enhanced compensation. If interest is received on compensation or enhanced compensation, then in that particular circumstance, the same will be taxable as income from other sources in the year of receipt, irrespective of the method of accounting followed by the SSE. In the year of receipt, irrespective of the method of accounting which has been followed by the SSE. That is 45.5. 45.5a is dealing with what? Taxability of capital gains in case of specified agreements. They are what? Joint development agreements. They are basically joint development agreements. If say individual or say HUF is a landowner, and he has given rights to builder. He has given rights to builder for construction of say real estate project. So here this is a joint development agreement where builder will sell certain portion of flats and certain portion of flats will be given to the individual landowner in lieu of the rights which he has acquired in for development. So here the individual or HUF basically he is entering into a specified agreement for development of project. So here if the individual or HUF they have transferred their share in project, if they have transferred the share in project after the date of issuance of completion certificate, they have transferred the share in their project after the date of issuance of completion certificate, then in that case capital gains, whatever the taxability of capital gains on transfer of land rights, the capital gains tax liability would arise in the previous year in which certificate of completion is issued. So there is a deferment of capital gains here. The taxability arises when certificate of completion is issued by the competent authority. So the capital gains tax liability will arise in the previous year in which the certificate of completion for whole or part of the project is issued by the competent authority. And what is the stamp duty value? What is the stamp duty value on the date of issue of such certificate of completion of his share plus whatever cash consideration he has received initially, that will be regarded as full value of consideration. That will be regarded as full value of consideration. Okay, the stamp duty value. And whatever the stamp, whenever the flats, say he has received 10 flats and SDV of one flat is say 50 lakh rupees. So this 50 lakhs into 10, that will be regarded as what? Full value of consideration. Besides this, he has received 51 lakh rupees through account pay check at the time of transfer of the rights. So this will become their say full value of consideration while computing the capital gains. Deferment is there till the completion certificate. Then when these flats are subsequently sold, whatever the full value of consideration which has been taken into account for computing the capital gains above will become the cost of acquisition. So full value of consideration deemed to be the cost action for determining capital gains on subsequent sale of the developed property. These in case the landowner is selling 5 flats out of the 10 flats which he has received, then that 50 lakh rupees per flat will be taken as what? Whatever the full value of consideration there, the same will be taken as the cost of acquisition here. In case the individual, he has transferred his share in the project. If the individual has transferred his share in the project on or before the date of issuance of completion certificate, he has not waited for the same. In that case, the normal provisions will be applicable and capital gains tax liability would arise in the previous year in which the property has been handed over to the developer. So in the year itself, say in 2018, they have handed over the property to the developer and this construction takes place, completion takes place in 21, but in 2020 they have transferred. So the taxability in that particular circumstance will arise in the previous year in which the property has been handed over to the developer by opening the capital gains. Okay, so this is 45.5a. Now section 46 is dealing with the provisions relating to computation of capital gains in case of compulsory say distribution of capital asset on liquidation of company. 46 is what dealing with? 46 is dealing with liquidation of company. Okay, liquidation of company. So in hands of company, under section 46(1), it has been provided that in hands of company, the transaction is not regarded as transfer. In hands of company, the transaction is not regarded as transfer and no capital gains arises on such case. So distribution is not regarded as transfer and no capital gains tax liability will arise. Okay. Then in hands of the shareholder. So if a shareholder is receiving any amount plus asset on liquidation, so the money received plus the fair market value of the asset which has been received as reduced by what? The share of deemed dividend. As reduced by share of deemed dividend, the same will be regarded as what? Full value of consideration for computing the capital gains in the hands of the shareholder, and capital gains will be liable to be taxed in hands of the shareholder. And in distribution of accumulated profits on liquidation, it will be regarded as deemed dividend under section 222C, and the same will be taxable in the hands of the shareholder under section 222C, and company will be liable to make TDS under section 194. So, and whatever is the fair market value of the asset which has been taken into account for computing full value of consideration will become what? Cost action when shareholder subsequently sell the capital asset. So fundamentally, what section 46 provides? Section 46 provides capital gains on distribution of assets by company on liquidation in the hands of the company. That distribution is not regarded as transfer. No capital gains arises. In hands of the shareholder, the capital gains arises. That is whatever is the money received plus market value of asset received. Say he has received this 25 lakh rupees. He has share in deemed dividend, that is reduced. Share in deemed dividend. Say 5 lakh is share in deemed dividend, that is reduced. The full value of consideration will be what? 20 lakh rupees. Then less indexed cost of acquisition of the shares or cost section, and the resultant sum will be capital gains. Okay. And even if agricultural land is received here, even if agricultural land, rural area agricultural land is received, taxability arises here. Okay. Because whatever is the assets received, taxability arises in hands of the shareholder. Then 46A, section 46A, it is say basically it is dealing with the provisions of taxability in case of buyback of shares and other specified securities. So here now if the company basically buy back the share, buyback of shares is by a domestic company. Buyback of shares is by a domestic company. Then under section 115 QA, the domestic company will be liable to pay additional income tax at rate of 23.296% on the amount of the income so distributed on buyback. The domestic company will be liable to pay the additional income tax. In case if buyback of shares is by a company other than domestic company, if buyback of shares is by a company other than domestic company, the same will not be subject to any additional income tax under 115 QA. If buyback of specified security is there by any company, then in that particular circumstance, that will not be subject to tax. The same will not be subject to tax in the hands of the company. And in hands of shareholder, when buyback of shares is by domestic companies, whether listed or unlisted, the income arising to the shareholders on buyback, the same will be what? Exempt from tax under section 1034A. The income arising will be exempt from tax under section 1034A. In case buyback of shares where there is no taxability in hands of company, the income will be taxable as capital gains. Whatever amount is received by security holder on buyback, that is regarded as what? Full value of consideration, less cost of acquisition or index cost of action of securities will be reduced to compute the resultant capital gains in these cases under section 46A. So this is what you have to remember, that in case of listed or unlisted companies, domestic companies, where domestic company is liable to pay additional income tax, then in that particular circumstance, the amount which is received by a shareholder on buyback, the same is what? Exempt from tax under section 1034A. Now, computation of capital gains in case of depreciable asset we have already discussed under profits and gains of business and profession. In case if block of asset does not cease to exist, but if any asset is sold and the proceeds of the asset is greater than the WDV of the block, in that particular circumstance, the resultant sum will be short-term capital gains. But if entire block cease to exist, then there can be short-term capital loss or short-term capital gains. This we have discussed. Section 50 we have already discussed in PGBP. Similarly, we have discussed section 50A also. 50A has also been discussed by us while computing the PGBP, that is in case of, say, power generating undertakings. You can go through the same power generating undertakings. If SLM basis, you know, they have claimed depreciation on SLM rates under 32(1), and if the asset is sold over and above original cost, the resultant sum will be short-term capital gain or long-term capital gain. No benefit of indexation is there. Whatever the proceeds minus the original cost, money is payable minus the actual cost, will give rise to what? Short-term or long-term capital gains. We have discussed the same under section 50A while computing PGBP income. Then section 50B is computation of capital gains in case of slump sale. What slump sale is? Sale of undertaking or division for a lump sum consideration without assigning individual values to the assets and liabilities. So here what basically the capital asset is, here capital asset is basically the undertaking or division is the capital asset. Undertaking or division is a capital asset. So fundamentally, whether the undertaking is held for more than 36 months immediately preceding the date of transfer. Here, if the undertaking is held for more than 36 months immediately preceding the date of transfer, the resultant sum will be long-term capital gain. However, no benefit of indexation is available. Remember, no benefit of indexation will be available while computing capital gains on slump sale. Long-term capital gains will be chargeable to tax at rate of 20%. If the period of holding of the undertaking or division does not exceed 36 months, the resultant sum will be short-term capital gains and normal tax rates will be applicable. Now, how you will be computing the capital gains? Here, what is the full value of consideration and the net worth of the undertaking. Here, net worth of the undertaking, the same is deemed to be what? The cost of acquisition. Net worth of the undertaking is deemed to be the cost of acquisition. So basically, this gives rise to what? The capital gains. And how you will be computing the net worth of the undertaking. Net worth of the undertaking, deemed cost of action is what? Net worth of the undertaking. Deemed cost of action is net worth of the undertaking, that is deemed cost of action. And what is the, how you will be computing the net worth? That is aggregate value of the assets of the undertaking minus what? The aggregate value of the liabilities of the undertaking as appearing, which have been transferred, appearing in the books of accounts. So here, aggregate value of the assets minus aggregate value of the liabilities. How you will be calculating the aggregate value of the assets? In case of depreciable asset, it will be the WDV. In case of assets in respect of which expenditure has been allowed as deduction under section 35 AD, entire cost has been allowed as deduction, its cost will be taken as nil. In case of other assets, book value will be taken. So here, no revaluation, no benefit of revaluation will be available. Okay, if any revaluation will be there, the same will be what? Ignored. Otherwise, everybody will be revaluing the assets and reducing the capital gains. And this net worth is to be certified by whom? Chartered accountant. This net worth is to be what? Certified by chartered accountant. So fundamentally, the full value of consideration is the lump sum consideration. Lump sum consideration is the full value of consideration. And the net worth of the undertaking is kya? The cost of acquisition. Resultant sum will be what? The capital gains. Then section 50C is very important. Section 50C is dealing with special provisions for full value of consideration in case of transfer of land or building or both. That is 50C, computing full value of consideration in case of say transfer of land or building or both. So here if the stamp duty value exceeds 110% of the actual consideration, if the stamp duty value exceeds 110% of the actual consideration, then the stamp duty value will be regarded as what? The full value of consideration. But in case if there is a difference between the date of agreement and date of registration, if the difference is there between the date of agreement and date of registration, and if whole or part of the consideration has been received on or before the date of agreement through account payee check or account payee bank draft or use of electronic clearing system or other electronic mode as may be prescribed, then the stamp duty value on the date of agreement will be considered. However, if there is a difference between the date of agreement and date of transfer, if the difference between date of agreement and date of transfer, but the consideration is received after the date of agreement or consideration has been received before the date of agreement in cash only, then stamp duty value on the date of transfer will be considered. But in case the stamp duty value does not exceed 110% of the consideration, then the consideration so received will be what? Taken as the full value of consideration. And in case if a reference has been made to the valuation officer, and if the valuation officer determines the value greater than the stamp duty value, if valuation officer determines the value which is greater than what the stamp duty value, then stamp duty value will be regarded as full value of consideration. If valuation officer determines the value which is less than what the stamp duty value, then the value so ascertained by the valuation officer will be regarded as what? The full value of consideration. And in case if the value, stamp duty value which has been adopted as full value of consideration is subsequently revised in appeal or revision, then the value so revised in appeal or revision shall be taken as full value of consideration. This is very, very important. 50C is very, very important section. And that can be definitely asked in your examination. Then we have valuation of unquoted shares. So if consideration received or accruing as a result of transfer, it is what? Less than what? The fair market value of the shares determined in prescribed manner, then the fair market value will be what? Determined in prescribed manner will be full value of consideration. In case of any other capital asset where the consideration received or accruing as a result of transfer of capital asset by an assessee is not ascertainable or the same cannot be determined, then the fair market value of the said asset on the date of transfer, that will be deemed to be what? The full value of consideration. Now section 51 is dealing with the provisions relating to advance money received. So if capital asset was say negotiation of transfer earlier and advance money has been received, and this advance money received is say forfeited because the buyer has not paid the balance sum. So we have forfeited the same. So when the advance money is forfeited on failure of negotiations for transfer of capital asset, what happens? If the advance money has been forfeited before 1/4/2014, if advance money has been forfeited before 1/4/2014, then the advance money so forfeited will be deducted from the cost section while computing the capital gains. And taxability basically is postponed to the year of actual transfer of the capital asset. But if advance money received and has been forfeited on or after 1/4/2014, then the same will be regarded as income from other sources in the year in which the advance money is so forfeited. It will be regarded as income from other sources in the year in which advance money is so forfeited, and here tax liability will be attracted in the year of what? Forfeiture of such advance money. And fundamentally you must remember it that if advance money is forfeited by the previous owner, okay, then same will not be reduced from the cost of acquisition. After reducing the advance money so forfeited, indexation will be done. So this is about section 51, that is dealing with the provisions relating to what? Advance money which has been received. So this was about the capital gains computation. Now we deal with the provisions relating to exemptions. Various exemptions have been provided. Exemptions are more or less similar in nature. Exemptions are similar in nature. So exemptions from capital gains is available when, say, if you are transferring, say, a residential house property. Remember, if you are transferring residential house property and invest where? In residential house property. If, say, agricultural land is being transferred, invest in agricultural land. If you have there is a compulsory acquisition of land or building, you make investment in land and building. So if you know investment is greater than what? Capital gain. If investment is greater than capital gain, entire capital gain is exempt. If investment is less than capital gain, then investment is less than capital gain. Then capital gain to the extent of investment is exempt. On this fundamental crux, these sections have been there, except what? Section 54F, where net consideration is what to be utilized for the exemption benefits. You have to utilize the net consideration, and for in 54GB also. So you must remember here 54 is what? Profit on sale of property used for residence. Exemption under section 54 is what? In respect of the residential house property. Who is the eligible assessee here? Remember who is eligible assessee. Eligible assessee is individual or HUF. Eligible assessee is individual or HUF, and the capital asset transferred is what? Residential house property being say building or land appurtenant thereto. Being building or land appurtenant thereto, there is a residential house property has been transferred. It will be, say, nature of asset is a long-term capital asset. Nature of asset is long-term capital asset. It has been transferred, and the assessee has to invest. The assessee has to invest in one or two residential houses situated in India. Now, in one house will be eligible if capital gain exceeds what? 2 crore rupees. If capital gain is less than 2 crores, if capital gain do not exceed 2 crores, then 2 residential house investment will be eligible. So if assessee has to make investment in one residential house property situated in India or 2 residential house in India where capital gains do not exceed what? Where the capital gains do not exceed rupees 2 crores. So the new asset is to be purchased or constructed. Now what is the amount of exemption? What is basically the time limit for purchase? We have to purchase the new residential house within a period of 1 year before or 2 years after the date of transfer, or we have to construct the new residential house within 3 years from the date of transfer. We have to purchase the new residential house within 1 year or 2 years from the date of transfer, or construct within 3 years from the 1 year before, or 2 years, or construct within 3 years from the date of transfer. Amount of exemption is if investment is greater than capital gain, entire capital gain will be exempt. If investment is less than capital gain to the extent of investment will be exempt. Then there is a lock-in period. Lock-in period is what? 3 years. Lock-in period is 3 years. If you transfer the new asset within a period of 3 years, then the capital gains which was earlier exempt, the same shall be reduced from the cost of acquisition of the new asset for computing the capital gains on new asset. And we are having capital gain account scheme that this amount of capital gain is to be invested in capital gain account scheme 1988 on or before due date of furnishing return of income to get what? The benefit of the exemption. Then utilize the same within 2 years or 3 years, as we have seen, for purchase or construction of the, say, residential house property. If your important aspect is, remember, if the capital gain do not exceed 2 crores, then 2 houses will qualify. They must be in India. If capital gain exceeds 2 crores, then only 1 house will qualify. Then section 54B is what? Capital gains on transfer of agricultural land. Which agricultural land? This agricultural land must be situated where? In urban area. Why in urban area? Because rural areas asset is not a capital asset. Rural agricultural land is not a capital asset. Now, who is an eligible assessee here? Individual or Hindu undivided family is the eligible assessee. What they have transferred is urban agricultural land has been transferred, which was used by the individual, or say in case of HUF by the individual or in the parents of the individual for period of purpose of, say, period of 2 years immediately preceding the date of transfer for agricultural purposes. So it was used by individual or his parents or by HUF for a period of at least 2 years immediately preceding the date of transfer for agricultural purposes. Then what is the amount of exemption? Here the amount of exemption is that in case you have to purchase, say, first of a new agricultural land, whether it can be in urban area or it can be in rural area, and the purchase must take place within 2 years from the date of transfer. The purchase must take place within 2 years from the date of transfer. Amount of exemption is same as of section 54. That is, if investment is greater than the capital gains, the entire capital gains will be exempt. If investment is less than capital gains, then the capital gains to the extent of the investment will be exempt. Then, in case if the new asset is transferred within 3 years, if the new asset has been transferred within 3 years from the date of purchase, then the capital gains, which was earlier exempt from tax, the same will be reduced from the cost action of the new asset. The lock-in period basically is 3 years. If the new asset is transferred within 3 years from the date of its purchase, then the capital gains, which was earlier exempt from tax, the same will be reduced. So fundamentally, section 54B, agricultural land has been transferred, that is a urban areas agricultural land, by individual or HUF. It's a long-term asset. The same has been used for 2 years immediately preceding the date of transfer. You get the benefit of exemption if you purchase new agricultural land within a period of such 2 years. Then we have section 54 EC. Basically, what section 54 EC provides is investments in bonds of, say, National Highway Authority of India, Rural Electrification Corporation, say Power Finance Corporation bonds. So here eligible assessees any person. Eligible assessees any person. Capital asset transferred is long-term capital asset. It is long-term capital asset, being land or building or both. A capital asset transferred is long-term capital asset, being land or building or both. Okay. Then here the assessee has to make investments within 6 months. The investments are to be made within 6 months from the date of transfer. Investment here is to be made, investment within 6 months from date of transfer, where in the bonds of National Highway Authority of India or Rural Electrification Corporation. The investment is to be made within 6 months from date of transfer in bonds of National Highway Authority of India and Rural Electrification Corporation, or say Power Finance Corporation bonds. They are redeemable, say, after 5 years. They are redeemable after 5 years. And here the maximum amount of investment which can be made in a financial year cannot exceed rupees 50 lakhs. And you have to invest within 6 months. Say in February we have transferred the asset. In February 2021 we have transferred the asset. Investment is made and the capital gains is, say, 105 crores. Capital gains is 105 crores. And we make the investment, say, in March 50 lakhs in NHAI bond. Again, in April, 50 lakhs in bonds of Rural Electrification Corporation. And say our 100 lakhs must be made exempt. So they say that if any capital, one or more capital asset has been transferred and investments is split in 2 different financial years, then also the benefit of exemption in aggregate cannot exceed for those capital assets which have been transferred in a particular financial year. Exemption benefit cannot exceed what? Rupees 50 lakhs. Then as we have seen, these investment is to be made within 6 months from the date of transfer. Amount of exemption is same as of section 54. If investment is greater than the capital gain, entire capital gain will be exempt. Otherwise, investment capital gain to the extent of investment will be exempt. Lock-in period here is 3 years. That in case if the bonds are transferred within 3 years, or if the 3 years, or say here 5 years, 3 years or 5 years. If the bonds are transferred within 3 years or bonds are transferred within 5 years, as the case maybe if the bonds have been issued after 18, then the capital gain, which was what earlier exempt from tax, the same will be chargeable to tax as long-term capital gains. The exempted capital gains will be taxable as long-term capital gains in the previous year in which such transfer or conversion takes place. So 54 EC is for any person who is transferring land or building or both being a long-term asset and is making investments in the bonds. Okay. Then we have what? Section 54F. 54F is what? Capital gains on transfer of capital asset, not to be charged in case of investment in residential houses. 54F is capital gain on transfer of any capital asset other than residential house property, and investment is made in what? Residential house property. So you can transfer, say, gold, you can transfer silver, you can transfer diamond, you can transfer shares, any capital asset. But investment is made where? In the residential house property. Here eligible assessee is whom? Eligible assessee is individual or HUF. Eligible assessee is individual or HUF. Capital asset is transferred is any capital asset not being residential house property. It is a long-term capital asset here. It is a long-term capital asset which has been transferred other than residential house property. And the new asset to be purchased is one residential house in India. We have to purchase one residential house in India. Here, purchase must take place within a period of 1 year before or 2 years from the date of transfer, or construction must take place within 3 years from the date of transfer. Amount of exemption is what? The capital gains upon net consideration into cost of new house. Amount of exemption is capital gains upon net consideration into what? Cost of new house. Now, an assessee purchases, say, within 2 years or constructs within 3 years from the date of transfer of original asset, any other residential house, or in case he transfers within 3 years the new house so purchased, then the capital gains which was earlier exempted from tax will be what? Chargeable to tax. So here also on purchase of a second house, you get what? The withdrawal of exemption will be there. That is to be remembered here. And proportionate capital gains is exempt. Say if for net consideration is 85 lakhs, index cost of acquisition is 20 lakhs, LTCG is 65 lakhs, and we make an investment of 50 lakhs here in the new residential house. So exemption will be 65 lakhs upon 85 lakhs into what? 50 lakhs. So here you remember proportionate exemption will be there. Then next is section 54D, eligible assessees, any person. Here there is a compulsory acquisition of land or building which was forming the part of industrial undertaking. There is a compulsory acquisition of land or building forming the part of industrial undertaking which was used by the assessee during 2 years immediately preceding the date of transfer for the business purposes. And it can be a long-term capital asset, and here new land or building is required to be purchased for the purpose of industrial undertaking. So there is basically compulsory acquisition. So new land or building for the purpose of industrial undertaking. Time limit of purchase is what, or construction is what, within 3 years from the date of receipt of the compensation. Amount of exemption is same as of section 54, that is capital gains or investment in new asset, which is lower. And if lock-in period here is 3 years, and in case if the new asset is transferred within 3 years from the acquisition, then the capital gain, which was earlier exempt from tax, the same will be reduced to find out the capital gains on new asset. Then we have what? Section 54G and 54GA, that is shifting of undertaking from rural area to rural area, or to say special economic zone. GA is special economic zone. Eligible assessee is any person. Now, because there is a shifting, we have transferred plant or machinery, land or building, shifting of the industrial undertaking from urban area to rural area or SEZ. We have shifted. Asset may be short-term or long-term capital asset. Purchase is to be made or construction is to be done in respect for new plant, machinery or building in such rural area or SEZ. We have to transfer the original assets or we have to incur notified expenses. So these amount investment is to be made here. And the time limit is within 1 year before or 2 years or 3 years, sorry, from the date of transfer. Investment is to be made within a period of 1 year before or 3 years after the date of transfer. Amount of exemption is same as of 54. Amount of exemption is same as of 54. And lock-in period here is also 3 years. Lock-in period is 3 years. In case if the new asset is transferred within 3 years, then the capital gains, which was earlier exempt from tax, the same will be reduced from the cost action of the new asset to arrive at what? The capital gains on the same. Then one section is further there, that is 54GB. 54GB is what? If we are selling any house or plot of land, we are selling any house or plot of land, and we have made a company has been incorporated, which is basically eligible startup. So investment in equity shares of eligible startup is engaged in eligible business is to be made to get the exemption benefit under section 54GB. Here company is to be incorporated in the financial year in which the capital asset is transferred or in the next financial year before the due date of furnishing the return. And the net consideration, the same is to be utilized for acquisition of what? The shares of the new company, and the assessee must own more than what? 25% of the share capital in the new company. So I have transferred land, I have incorporated a company. Company is basically eligible startup. I take shares, I am utilizing the net consideration for acquisition of the shares. And the company will do what? Company will purchase new plant or machinery within a period of 1 year from the date of its subscription. Then in case if the entire net consideration is reinvested for acquisition of new plant or machinery, entire capital gains will be exempt. And in case only part of the net consideration is reinvested in new plant and machinery, then proportionate capital gain will be what? Exempt here. Then in that case, proportionate capital gain will be exempt. Now basically here the investment will be made in eligible startup. Investment there is made in eligible startup. But you must remember that equity shares as well as the assets must not be transferred here. Lock-in period is 5 years. If the same has been transferred, say if you have transferred the equity shares or if the new asset has been transferred within 5 years from the acquisition, then in that particular circumstance, the capital gain from the capital gain which was earlier exempt from tax will be what? Chargeable to tax. So this was about what the exemptions which we have discussed, that whether it's a 54, whether it's a 54B, 54D, 54G, 54GA, GB, EC, F. So this way we get the exemptions. Now we come to what? Section 55A. Section 55A it is dealing with the provisions relating to reference to valuation officer. Section 55A is reference to valuation officer. Here, the AO may refer the valuation of the capital asset to the valuation officer for ascertaining the fair market value. If the value of the asset is in accordance with the estimate made by the registered valuer, there is a variance with the fair market value, then reference will be there. It can be positive or negative variance, whatever the case may be. In any other case, if the fair market value exceeds the value claimed by the assessee, the fair market value exceeds the claimed value by rupees 25,000 or 15% of the value claimed by the assessee. The difference basically exceeds what? 15% of the value claimed by the assessee or 25,000. Then reference will be made, and having regard to the nature of the asset and other relevant circumstances, it is necessary so to do, then reference will be made to the valuation officer. In those cases, valuation officer will determine the value. Then section 111A, it is dealing with the provisions of taxation of short-term capital gains. It is dealing with the provisions of taxation of short-term capital gains on transfer of equity shares of a company, or say equity shares, equity units of the equity-oriented fund or units of business trust. Short-term capital gains arising on transfer of equity shares of a company, units of equity-oriented fund or units of business trust on which securities transaction tax has been paid. The same will be chargeable to tax at rate of 15%. The same will be chargeable to tax at rate of 15%. In case of, say, resident individual or resident Hindu undivided family, if your other income falls short of maximum amount not chargeable to tax, short-term capital gains will be reduced by such shortfall. So if STCG on such STCG is say 5 lakh rupees and other income is 2 lakh rupees, basic exemption limit is 250. So there is a shortfall of what? 50,000. So from 5 lakh, this 50,000 will be reduced. From 5 lakh, 50,000 will be reduced, and on balance 15% tax will be levied. No deduction under chapter 6A on STCG covered under section 111A will be available. No deduction under chapter 6A will be available. Other short-term capital gains will be chargeable to tax at applicable normal rates. Other short-term capital gains will be taxable at applicable normal rates. Then we are having computation of long-term capital gains. Section 112 is dealing with the provisions relating to computation of long-term capital gains. In case of resident, individual and HUF, long-term capital gains will be chargeable to tax at rate of 20%, and in case if the other income falls short of maximum amount not chargeable to tax, these long-term capital gains will be reduced by such shortfall. So this long-term capital gains will be reduced by such shortfall, and on the balance 20% tax will be levied. Then in case of non-resident, not being a company or a foreign company, if unlisted securities are transferred, then in that particular circumstance, the taxation will be at rate of 10% without giving the effect of first proviso and second proviso. If other capital assets are transferred, taxation will be at rate of say 20%. In any other case, long-term capital gains will be chargeable to tax at rate of 20%, and in case of listed securities and zero coupon bonds, tax will be levied at rate of 10% without indexation and 20% say after indexation, whichever is lower. So we have to take 10% without indexation and 20% after indexation, which is lower in case of listed securities and zero coupon bonds. Listed securities and zero coupon bonds. No deduction under chapter 6A will be available from such long-term capital gains. This is taxation of the long-term capital gains under section 112. Then for LTCG on equity shares, units of equity oriented fund or units of business trust. So any long-term capital gains say exceeding rupees 1 lakh on transfer of say equity shares or units of equity oriented fund or units of business trust, the same will be what? Chargeable to tax at rate of 10%. The same will be chargeable to tax at rate of 10%. Okay. If securities transaction tax has been paid on acquisition and sale of shares in case of equity shares, and in case of units of or equity oriented mutual fund units or business trust at the time of say sale. Okay. Then in case of resident individuals and Hindu undivided family, the long-term capital gains shall be reduced by the unexhausted basic exemption limit and balance income will be chargeable to tax at rate of 10%. No benefit, first proviso and second proviso will not be applicable, that is TT buying rate, selling rate and indexation. No deduction under chapter 6A will be admissible. No rebate under 87A will be admissible from the tax. Now, in how you will be computing the cost of action here, in first step you will be computing the cost of action, actual cost of action of those equity shares. In step 2 you will find out the fair market value as on 31/3/2018, because taxation of the LTCG arose after that only. So they have given the benefit that you can take fair market value or the full value of consideration, say whichever is less, or the full value of consideration, find out the fair market value, full value of consideration, which is less. Then compare step 1 and step 2. Step 3, the cost action will be what? Higher of the step 1 and step 2. So step 1 and step 2, higher of the same will be the way to compute the cost action. So this way we are required to compute what? The cost action for computing the capital gains in case of taxation of capital gains is done under 112A. In excess of 1 lakh rupees, tax will be levied at rate of 10%. So this was all about what capital gains which we have discussed. This is a very, very important head of income. Please do the practical questions also so that you can score what? Good marks here. This is a very, very, very important head of income.